Walk the Squawk.
First ever. Oh, hello and welcome to our first ever live podcast. We are the Prophecy Walkers, Hazel and Alistair, and we are bringing you the first episode of Walk the Squawk today. And we've decided that the basis for our podcast is going to be live because we want to involve you. We want live conversation. We want to be real. And so this is what we're doing. So welcome today. How are you doing today, Alistair?
Yeah, good. Actually, you should probably tell everyone how difficult it's been today.
Yeah.
So when we scheduled this podcast, we didn't realise the date, the significance of the date. And when we did that, we started to get information about the Twin Towers, the Twin Flame, the 9/11, all the numerology surrounding that. And on our journey, when we've hit portals like today, 9/11, if there is something that has been dark, or for lack of a better term, evil, has happened on that day, on that portal throughout time, every year, we've found that through our journey when we've been working with higher consciousness in purity, the more purification we've done, the more sensitive we become to certain portals. We've noticed that bad things happen on those days to us, and it makes our life very difficult. For example, 9/11 is one of them. Black Friday was a really difficult one for us.
Yeah.
And there was another one, wasn't there? The Jubilee.
Oh yeah, that was challenging as well.
That was probably the hardest.
Yeah, because essentially what we do is we go into these energy portals, and it's like we go in and we welcome everything where we can transmute the darkness into the light, carrying that light, carrying that flame through dark energies, because that's why we're here. That's why we do the work that we do, is to hold that light and not be afraid of the dark. So so today we've had our challenges, and what do they come up with? It's like collectively we both woke up and we were like, oh my God, it's really dense today, but we're supposed to be launching this podcast, and what are we going to do? Because there's this sort of judgment or expectation I put on myself of having to perform and say all the right things and everything. And this is part of what we're doing, is just showing up and being present and real, and also giving it as an example of, how we move through things in the moment as the energies are rising and as they are happening. So
yeah, and when I realized it was 9/11, we decided yesterday to do a channeling to get more information on this, because like I said, it was a bit of a surprise for us. Part of the reason we're doing this live podcast is so you can ask us questions. So if you're watching now, please send some questions. I'm viewing it on a separate screen so I can see what's coming through, and we'll try our best to answer any questions. But we printed off the channeling like we did for 5D News. We do have a tiny bit of 5D News that we can add on later about ghosts. One of my specialties. Remind me I'm going to write that down. 5D ghosts.
So the aim of this podcast is that you can get to meet us a bit, we get to meet you, and bit by bit we can unfold our journey even deeper, as we also continue this journey of life every day, and things change and evolve all the time. So we hope that we will be bringing you some valuable information that will enhance you and your life, and so you can better navigate the energies that you're moving through dark and light, and your conscious evolution, your own journey, your own path of becoming the greatest version that you possibly can. And if we can be here to offer some assistance to that, then, you know, with the journey that we've been on, then that's why we're doing this. So yeah, so let's get started.
Yeah, do you want me to? I'll dive in.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we'll, instead of just reading out the whole thing like I did last time, I'll read it out and we'll talk about each section, because we don't want to. This is more of a discussion to talk about twin flames, because the phrase twin flame is thrown around quite a lot, and I don't think people truly understand what it means. So I'm just going to, some of it I'll read word for word, and then some of it we'll discuss. Where there is dark, you need the light to shatter apart the illusions. And this is why there are so many people afraid to go into the dark, because they think there is only darkness. And they forget to carry the pure light of their heart, their soul, their wisdom of love through the dark. And this is a great significant message for these times, as we are entering into the northern hemisphere, into darkness. So it's a pre-warning to carry your light through this phase. So this came from a question of what are the energies for today, and what are they bringing in? And we'll go into it in a minute, but this is a precursor. This energy today is a precursor. And she's talking about light. A lot of this information is about the flame, because we're going into the darkness of autumn and winter. We're actually already in autumn. So we're going into the darkness of winter, and we could talk more about what that means. Most of the population of the planet resides within the northern hemisphere. So most of the planet, even though there is a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere, is therefore the overriding energy of going into the dark. So the going into the dark during this time is stronger in the northern hemisphere during this time, because I think we Googled it, is about 80% of the population lives in the northern hemisphere. So the energy of darkness is stronger during the months of September all the way through to February next year. So what's interesting as well, because we've just come out of August, and Hazel warned me about this last year, and it was a couple of years ago actually, about the void in summer. And what came through on the channeling, she said, so during the summer phase, we are also met with the winter of the southern hemisphere, but it's not as strong. Now, this is really interesting, because I didn't, until she told us this, our guide, that about the southern and northern hemisphere, I didn't understand why there was a void energy in summer, especially August. We find the best way to get through August is to just work through it, because it's so intense. And the void energy is about going inside. And the shadow of the void is a void dance, dancing around the void and not going into yourself. So that hits in August, and it can be quite difficult. And that's the southern hemisphere's winter affecting our summer. So can you imagine how our northern hemisphere winter affects the southern hemisphere's summer?
Yeah, goodness me.
Yeah.
Actually, we'd like to know, like, if you're aware and you're somebody who really embodies the seasons and seasonal life, like really embodies it, and you are living in the southern hemisphere, we would love to hear from you about that. Because over the last 10 years, I've been working every season and every month through my feminine body, but also every year I've been working in embodying the seasons and really knowing what that means. So
yeah, we'd love to hear from some Aussies.
Yeah,
Kiwis.
we love them. Yeah, my brother's living down in New
I've
Zealand.
got plenty of relatives in Sydney. Anyway, so given this piece of information, this is how important it is as a precursor for the equinox. So we're going to do a channeling and a video on the equinox. It's actually one of our favorite portals of the year, the autumn equinox. My favorite is the winter solstice, but the autumn equinox is incredible, and there's some beautiful energy coming in, because we're actually coming into a time of unity in the next, well, in broad terms, I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, but the changes that are happening now are so significant, leaning towards love and joy, leaning away from fear and darkness into light. So what's happening now, if we live the journey, if we sit in the journey and we understand what is happening now, it's really incredible.
Yeah, so if I kind of just add to that about the coming into this equinox energy. So we come out of the solstices, which were the heightened, like full light or full dark, okay? And then obviously we've got the equinoxes is the midpoint between those solstices, so high summer and deep winter. And energetically, what that can mean to a deeper level is, you know, it's not just like, oh, we're halfway through summer, or we're halfway through the winter phase, the light phase, the dark phase. It's coming into balance. So we are in balance. And then, you know, if we're working in divine union like we are, and working in unity consciousness like we are, this is an invitation. How can you come into greater balance within yourself, within that light and dark? And as we're coming into this dark phase now with the winter hemisphere, but if you are in the summer hemisphere, you're going the other way around, is that you're carrying that light within you. And this is why the equinoxes are incredible portals. And as we go every 6 months now, from equinox to equinox, it invites us again to come into a greater sense of balance again. So if you're working consciously with these, it's like you can use them as a step up every time, because the solstices, they create expansion. In the wintertime, they create expansion into the void, your soul consciousness, your inner consciousness. And in the summertime, it creates the outer void space of like huge expansion, what is out there and everything. And in between that, you've got the balance between your inner and your outer worlds. So this is what this is how profoundly you can work with these equinoxes energies, because each time you're like, okay, I'm coming into a point of balance. How can I balance myself better every 6 months to spiral up?
Yeah, and I'd just like to big up Hazel on this, because Hazel is an incredible mentor when it comes to working with the seasonal energies. She holds women's men's groups. She guides women through the seasons and how to incorporate that into not just the menstrual cycle, but the cycle of life and creativity. And she taught me that as a man, and it has completely changed my whole life. You know, it's the purity essentially of paganism and what that means, and essentially living with the cycles of life. So I would, if I didn't know Hazel, I would bite her hand off if she was offering a course about working with the cycles.
Thank you, darling.
I just wanted to acknowledge that this is a podcast, and the reason we're doing it live is so we can interact with people. And one of our subscribers, Zentaro, has just said, yeah, that she totally gets the whole August void thing.
Yeah,
so that's excellent. I'm glad that someone else has been feeling
because
that.
I really want to add to that, because people are there's an avoidance that comes in the summertime within the 3D reality of let's just go on holiday and like forget everything. But actually, I invited us to go beyond that this year and to go, okay, we're going to dive in and we're going to go into that energy of void to access a greater level of soul connection within that expansion. And that's why we've been working so hard throughout August.
Yeah, I want to go back on what I said. When I said we worked through it, I didn't mean to avoid it. I meant the force of creation is because we were talking about National Suicide Prevention Day yesterday. And in my podcast, I talk about 8 different things to help to come out breaking the patterns of suicidal thoughts. And I can't remember if it was one of the 8, but one of the teachings I learned from our journey is creation is a powerful tool to break down the ego, to destroy the ego, because you're essentially you're creating something new. So it's like you're birthing yourself out of your body, like a spider or a crab does. You know how they push themselves out of their old body? That's what creation is. It's such an incredible tool. But the problem that I had as a man, I didn't know how to create, so I had to learn what I needed to create in my purpose, and so I had to leave my old job behind. and surrender to the feminine.
Which you can see in our other video.
Yeah, you can see already. I want to again talk about this podcast and why we created it and why it's called Walk the Squawk. I've created a second channeled message from the Macaw, which will be released on Friday. And I did a short channel message of the Macaw, and what came through was quite, I wasn't prepared for what was coming through, and it was about censorship, actually, which I was quite surprised by, because I'm going through a process of channeling different animals for reasons I won't discuss now, but each time I do that, I'm embodying the wisdom of the animal, and I invite you to do the same, because those animals, their energy is part of your DNA. We are not separate to the nature, to the animal kingdom, to nature. We like to separate ourselves, and we call them animals and we call ourselves humans, but we are animals, and their consciousness is part of our consciousness. So I invite you to study the metaphors and to study the behaviors, because I only touch on, each time we do these animal channelings, I only touch on just a portion of that animal's wisdom. I could write a whole book on each animal. That's how much wisdom comes through.
And you are.
And I am, yeah. Yeah. And so I just wanted to say that the Macaw is a really beautiful and powerful speaker. And we call it Walk the Squawk because it's about walking the talk. And what does that mean? Well, it's not about knowledge. It's not about knowledge. It's about wisdom. Now, what is the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Knowledge is something you've read, something you've heard, something someone has told you, and you remember it. That's knowledge. Wisdom is when you know it, but you fully embody it. It comes into the consciousness of your body. Now, when that happens, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's basically like, you can't have one piece of knowledge on its own. And this is where, I often talk about this dot connecting. And when you come into an expanded consciousness and you're going beyond what the singular passage of what you know and you've learned, but then it's like you've learned this bit and you've learned this bit and this bit and this bit, and then you start connecting them all together. And when you start connecting them, becoming these dot connectors, and then you start bringing it back into the one, the I, and realizing, how does it relate for me in my life? And then how does it relate in the two, me and the life with you? And then how does that I've brought in relate to me in creation? So with the third line of consciousness, then you start embodying those pieces of knowledge. And this is why one of the things that we are so like profoundly like part of our message is like turning knowledge into wisdom. And how do you do that? And how do you take the pathway to do that? And all of our trainings are about that. And this is why, like, we don't want you to be following us. I mean, yes, please follow us, here, but follow in order to follow yourself, become your own greatest guide. Because when you become your own greatest guide, you're igniting that voice within you that can then squawk out, that can speak the truth from the heart, because you've embodied that knowledge. And you know if somebody's embodied the knowledge, because you get to a certain level where you're like, oh, they're talking it, but I don't feel them. And this is the difference. This is the feeling. This is the resonance, the vibration that you're looking for.
Yeah, and this is why we've struggled in personal, let's call them circles. That's something to talk about, where people do not recognize our wisdom because they are not feeling our energy. And so you could be sat next to a complete beginner, and and they would start telling you things. And it's really interesting because wisdom can only be felt. It can't be known. It can't be. It's not like I say to people who ask me for help that it doesn't matter how many self-help books you read. I've read them all. It doesn't matter how many you read, because you're going to have to live that anyway. So you might as well write them yourself. And that's wisdom. That's true wisdom, because you can't learn it from a book, but those books help you get there. In my opinion, I couldn't have got into higher fourth dimensional awareness in order to get into the 5 without reading other people's books. So I'm not saying it's not useful, it is, but in the end, when you hit this higher consciousness of self-purification, you have to go inwards. And when you go inwards, you realize everything's already in there.
So that's essentially why we call this Walk the Squawk, because it's really our podcast to help you, or to give guidance to embodying the knowledge and to take that path. And not only to walk the talk, but like discover your own voice in that, and like be proud of yourself, and like squawk like from the heart. But also, sorry darling, what you were going to say about the macaws is that they stand in love, they do it together. So it's about doing it together. They mate for life.
And there's a lot of animals that do that. Swans do that as well, a lot of birds do that. And I think you mentioned it yesterday, it's about the embodiment of nature. So that's another reason we're working with animal wisdom. That's how I'm doing it personally. Like when I work personally with Hazel, I translate everything into animal behavior. It's the only way I can work.
Sometimes when we're like going through something, we can't seem to connect, and he's like, what does that mean in animal? I feel into that. What animal is it? And so that I can communicate better. It's a beautiful way of working.
Like for example, we work with the tiger a lot. The tiger's a really overpowering energy, and every animal has a light and a dark. And it's the fourth dimensional consciousness of humanity isn't ready for the tiger. If you notice, if you study oracle decks, special animal decks, the tiger's not often in there. It's a very rare animal because it's so powerful, it's so overwhelming, and it's a power of creation. But its shadow is it's got a really heavy shadow, and so it's about violation, and the violation can be energetic. And so, for example, say you've just been into a meditation ceremony or a plant ceremony, and you come out into a busy area, and you feel pain in your body. That's violation. That's energetic violation. So, like, I can communicate like that about the tiger, and that's really interesting. I just wanted to acknowledge Zentaro's speaking about mourning her ability to create because she went through the menopause. You have something to say about that, don't you?
That there is a different energy. I haven't come into the menopause yet, but I'm probably perimenopause. I've decided to journey through it in a different way than is perhaps presented. I've decided that I'm going to carve the path for myself with that. But with the one way of looking at it is this loss of the red cycle every month, that we get to journey that. And what I would say is I would invite really to take the same moon cycle, your menstrual cycle, but really to follow the moon in that way and see if you can align with the moon in that way. And I'm sure you probably do, given the name Zentaro, but really take that deeper dive into embodying the fullness of that moon beyond rituals. Like, how can I embody that deeper? How can I listen to that deeper and let that resonance run through me? And then align those points of creation within that cycle, and start seeing, does it start weaving a cycle there for you that ignites within your body to get even deeper? And there's also the wisdom of the black energy. So the maiden is the white energy, the woman in her menstrual time is the red energy, and then the wise woman energy in menopause is the black energy. It's when the wise woman keeps her blood in her body. So when you think about, oh, actually, I'm keeping that wisdom in my body, how else is that blood wisdom, that magic moving through me, because I'm keeping that wisdom rather than giving it to external life? How is that life, that creative life force, being ignited within me? So hopefully there's an invitation in there, and through that loss energy there will be another energy of creation available.
So how does a man create then? If a woman, so what I'm asking is, she's saying that she had to mourn her ability to create because her menstrual cycle finished. But how does that mean she has to stop creating if I can create and I don't have a menstrual cycle?
It doesn't. It means the loss of one way of creation, but through that death, seeing what other method of creation wants to be created. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay, I'll move on to the rest of the channeling. So I asked, could you tell us what is a twin flame and what is the significance for today? Twin flame is a light between the lines. When you read between the lines, you get a greater enlightenment. It is an invitation to go beyond what you knew before, beyond logic, beyond words. Go into feeling, go into sensing, hearing, believing before seeing. I want to interrupt and talk about that. Believing before seeing. This is huge. It's a huge point. Believing before seeing is the opposite to science. And this is why I believe, in my humble opinion, we've been held back so greatly. And I understand science. I used to be a great fan of science, especially biology and physics, but I understand its limitations. It's a baby in terms of its level of creation and of understanding, and there are certain things that scientists just aren't willing to explore because they're so limited in their understanding. Sorry, not in their understanding, in their belief.
Can I say that the original science was connected to nature?
Yeah.
And that is alchemy. And that's the true essence of science. It comes from the magician energy, which is the alchemical energy of nature. Now, spirit was taken out of this because atheism was also attached to science. So then when you've got the detachment of soul applied to a method such as science, applied to technology, this is where the destruction comes in, because it's severing the connection to your soul source, spirit, to nature in every level. And that's the problem.
Yeah, it's not the only problem. There is another problem and I'm not bashing men because I am a man, but I also come from a place of purity, and I'm a mentor of that purity, and understand that the masculine energy is and mostly distorted and corrupt. And a lot of the energy that is held in these groups, I'm going to say groups because it's not all of them, but in these groups is about control, and the narrative is control. We all know that. There's no point in being ignorant to that. And this is why the believing before seeing, that is what has helped me along my journey. That's why I was able to surrender, because I didn't say, oh, wait a minute, I need to know what happens first before I surrender.
Yeah.
And that's what takes courage. And that's where the true wisdom comes from. So I feel really passionate about that. It's like in justice, the justice system. It should be called the injustice system, because essentially, it's innocent until proven guilty, but everybody knows that's not the case. The energy is always you're guilty until proven otherwise. That's the energy. If people are following the energy, then the narrative is a lie. And this is how that applies, in my opinion.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting.
Yeah. So to believe in your light is only then you will meet the light of another. And this is how we met. So we should stop there to explain that, right? Mm-hmm. So just before Hazel and I, we met about 1,003 days ago. We didn't know each other before we met, obviously. and we were both on a really deep healing journey. And just before we met, we both made a really powerful choice on our journeys to say yes to completely owning and taking responsibility for our own healing journey. And then like 2 weeks later, we meet. And so for her to say this, we were like, oh yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah.
That's really strange.
Yeah.
So I'm going to repeat that. So to believe in your light, so to believe in yourself, is only then will you meet the light of another. So only when you love yourself will you find true love.
Easier said than done.
Mic drop.
Oh gosh.
For you cannot meet your twin flame unless you believe in yourself and your flame first. And this is why so many struggle, because they believe they meet their twin flame, but they still meet, as you know, from a place of unpurified being. But when you have chosen the yes for your journey only to ignite the flame of your heart, only then will you meet the resonance, the true resonance of that which you see and feel within another.
Yeah, beautiful. I recognize this so much from having done so many years of women's work and sitting in women's circles and courses, is that there's always this desire, this want to meet another and to work consciously with another. And of course, I've always known that was a possibility that was available. And yes, I have been deeply betrayed in that process, and that betrayal has led to me now being able to be in a beautiful conscious partnership. But I completely let go of needing somebody else's flame to ignite my flame. And I think one of the powerful things is really, have you really fully taken responsibility for your own journey, fully, without, oh, I hope I will meet someone day. I completely gave that up. I even had 2 years of complete body shutdown where I thought that was it. I'm celibate for the rest of my life. And yeah, I'm fine with that. And I've had a huge 10-year journey since then. But it's really about, getting really, really honest about that. And when you are meeting somebody, and I've got this in my online course, actually, Love Expose, is that one of the things is that we meet somebody and we're like, we also have that love bombing, that narcissistic love bombing that we allow within ourselves. It's like, oh, it feels amazing. It's like, oh, this is the one. And if you have that feeling and it's like, oh, I feel weak at the knees, and it's like, oh, you're melting into each other. That if part of your body is feeling weak when you meet somebody,
oh yeah,
that is your body saying, this is not the one for you. I have physically had that, and I had that before in my last covert narcissistic experience, and I did not know that then. So really start getting, we advise everybody on this journey to learn about narcissism, whether you want to or not. It will help you in the purification process.
There are so many things I can say about narcissism, and it's not all bad. That's a lie.
It's challenging and
it's brilliant. It's so interesting because I was just discovering the other day that there's 12 archetypes of man, and we've been embodying those and correcting them where they need correcting. Because they're a bit outdated. And there are 12 different types of narcissism. 12 is a very powerful number.
Maybe we'll do a podcast just about that.
Well, yeah, I'm actually writing about this because I've been decoding the narcissistic behavior that I notice within myself and in other men, and then translating that into direct consciousness words and writing to help people better understand the basics of narcissistic behavior, because essentially what it is a toxic shame avoidance system. And when you go really deep, there is actually something that hides behind that, at the door of all doors, the doors that stopped you from getting to the next stage of enlightenment. And it's a really, really big door, and that's what everybody runs away from. And that's the door I ran towards. And it was terrifying. It's terrifying, and it's been really difficult. It's taken me to the edge many, many, many times, but in doing so, I learned everything about the darkness before learning about the light, which is again the opposite of what most people do.
Yeah, and this is why I want to say is because we talk here about meeting your twin flame, being able to purify together and take that journey together. So are you willing to face that dark? Are you willing to hold that light of your own heart as you take yourself into a transformational process? And this is exactly what you're doing, because you say, yeah, I went into the dark, but you trusted yourself that you would get through it every single time, and it made your heart stronger. And that's how we meet. That is how we meet each other, and that is how we come into unity, and that is how we elevate and make each other stronger. And that is the twin flame energy, working together in that way.
It's interesting, the theme of this podcast. I wasn't aware what it was, but now I'm understanding what it is. And Zentara has just pointed out something really interesting, which I completely resonate with. She said, if you're entering into a relationship for the wrong reasons, you come into codependency.
Totally. Yeah.
And I want to add to that, because that happened to me, and I notice it in unconscious men. Is what is attached to the codependency is what's the word? Infatuation. So when a man comes into codependency, it may not look like codependency if he is creating his own life and he's busy and he's successful, but he's doing everything to please her. That's infatuation. And even when he knows that she's not right for him, or vice versa, or they're not willing to work on their stuff, there is that covert narcissism of like, oh, please don't leave me. And it's that infatuation of not willing to let go. And codependency coupled with infatuation is really toxic and destructive, because it creates this push and pull energy, which is the circle of narcissistic behavior of devaluing, not in any particular order, I can't remember that they are, but there's I'm writing about this at the moment. The circle of narcissism has 4 points.
It's love bombing, rejecting, and hoovering,
and the other one, idealizing,
and that's actually objectification. So if you're in a so-called conscious partnership, and you're not able to unpack and unpick these things, like there's so much toxicity that goes on. And this is why what you were saying is owning up to it, taking responsibility. It comes back to what you're saying. Taking responsibility for your journey is the most key thing. And this is how you start to walk your squawk, and you start to take the journey not only on your own, but you take that journey, possibly to meeting another, or it doesn't have to be romantically, but then you can work with people, doesn't matter, any relation, on a much greater level. And this is what part of this is about, is that we are opening up a wider consciousness space to say there is something else available in order to know how we can work together. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I had something.
Should we continue?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. We were talking about narcissism, weren't we? Oh yeah, the door. I wanted to. I spoke about there's a door behind narcissism and shame, because narcissism is huge. It's like the branches of the tree that the dark tree that go down to the roots, and the root isn't shame. And when I went there, and I'm telling you this in words, so you can't embody it until you've seen it and felt it yourself. So this will come through as knowledge. but the door behind everything is ignorance. And the pain of ignorance, the grief of ignorance, the avoidance of ignorance is so big you cannot imagine it, because it goes back to the beginning of everything. The ignorance of all the betrayals, the ignorance, I'll give you some grounded examples, the ignorance of people throwing their trash on the floor, the ignorance of drinking alcohol as poison. Little things like these, they build up and they build up. The ignorance of politics, the ignorance of abuse, the ignorance of ignoring the wars, the ignorance of the apartheid, like all these, just imagine how many different forms of ignorance there are. The ignorance of overfishing, the ignorance of chucking all of our plastic into the ocean, right? Imagine all of that built up in the collective and then coming into the one. Can you imagine feeling that? No. So that's why we avoid it.
Yeah, and that's why we're opening this space of consciousness, because it's so scary to go there. And to be supported in going there. And this is, the next level, really.
Yeah, and
we need to.
If you tune into the channeling from the Macaw, it talks about why nobody wants to hear the truth and how truth is love and love is truth. So when somebody tells the truth, they either tune out, switch off, or they insult you because they throw their ignorance at you. And this is why we work with the Macaw. It's funny how the Macaw, I had this picture of a Macaw on my wall, and I work with animals, animal wisdom. And Hazel goes, what are we going to call the podcast? And the next day I'm writing, and I turn to the Macaw, and it says to me, it goes, squawk, like this. And I was like, oh, walk the squawk. And the wisdom that comes from this animal, it's about non-censorship, and censorship is not speaking the truth, right? And we live in a society of ignorance, and ignorance is avoidance of the truth, right? And so it's really difficult to speak our whole truth on a platform that is associated with censorship, as we were talking about that yesterday. There just yet. But we're actually going to use Spotify as well at some point, because I don't think they do as much censorship, do they?
Yeah, and some other platforms. So.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and essentially speaking your truth is about speaking from your heart. So let's bring that back to the... You
just got a question. She said, how do you get through the ignorance of ignorance? That's a good question. You can't. So the ignorance of ignorance is actually, you have to ignore their ignorance. Well, not ignore it, but acknowledge it and come into yourself and acknowledge that everybody has to lead their own path. Now, there are plenty of people in everybody's lives who are ignorant, and I'm not saying I'm completely not ignorant in every part of my life, but I try my best to embody and integrate that lesson of ignorance that I've learned. For example, when as often as I can, when I'm down the beach and I see litter, I will pick up the litter and I'll put it in the bin. And I try my part, in small parts. But to get through someone's ignorance, over to you.
Well, I think this is where we've discovered is that when you go through that door and you reach rock bottom, it's like, when you reach rock bottom, you have a choice. You have your own ignorance face to face with the other part of your own ignorance. Am I going to ignore you? Am I going to acknowledge you? What do I do then? I come into a stalemate.
Yeah.
If I'm at the bottom and I can see it, the lowest of the low, what do I then do? You actually just said it. You then make a choice. You make a different choice. You see the litter, you pick it up. So what does it mean? Is that you've gone down, you've got to the core of the truth within the ignorance within yourself. What do? You then choose.
Yeah.
You then have an opportunity to choose for your light in that moment. Otherwise, you continue perpetuating the cycles of ignorance, which will only keep you trapped in the dark. So then this is where you're talking about, you start ascending and coming into service. How can I make a different choice to come into a greater service of life? And this is where the power of creation begins, in the darkest places.
Yeah.
How can I make a different choice within this density? How can I make a choice, even though I've been ignorant and I've been choosing for this darkness all my life? And this is constantly what we're working with now. It's like, oh, meeting this brick wall of ignorance, meeting this brick wall, meeting this pattern, this thing.
Yeah.
How can I make a different choice and to come into service of life and love?
Yeah, but to just give you a bit more advice on your question, if someone is professing their ignorance, throwing their ignorance at you, and you're trying to create your life, it is a huge distraction. And the only antidote is to ignore that and create your life, which is challenging. And it's a process of learning to do that. So if somebody is essentially sabotaging you with their own ignorance, you have to put borders there, and really strong borders. And sometimes that may mean ejecting certain people from your life, so that you can create a stable foundation for your life. Because if you don't, you go down with them. You know, it's like if you're on a big ship and someone jumps overboard, do you jump in the water with them, or do you throw them a lifeline and they climb up to you? That's how it works.
Yeah.
So we'll continue this.
And this is all, everything we're talking about all the time comes back to this unity, this love and unity, this grounded love and unity. And that's why, you know, on this 9/11, you know, we're meeting like the one and the one. How do we come together, you know, in a master number such as 11, you know, and actually embody that? So
1 is me, 2 is we, 3 is family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she said, now it is time to light 2 candles and let them burn. Make a wish. So it's a good idea to do that today if you have 2 candles, and make a wish. That's a really powerful ritual that you can do.
Ritual, yeah.
We did that today, and make a wish from the heart. I would say make a wish for yourself, a wish for what you want to bring into your life, a wish for the second line of consciousness, so who you want to bring into your life, and a wish for the third line of consciousness, a wish for your family and the greater population of what you would like to see come true.
Yeah.
So I encourage that. Yeah. Make 2 wishes, it says. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 for each flame.
Yeah.
And how they burn together.
How does it get any better than that?
Exactly.
It says, and make 2 wishes that ignite each other. That's when the alchemy of each wish comes together. It creates something never seen before. So yes, it is 2 flames that stand together, but with the wish of the burning together. In this alchemy, you create the 3rd way, which is what you're doing together, because you're 2 flames. 2 flames burn so brightly, and the alchemy you are creating together is unfathomable. It is that of which people only dream of. Blah, 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 blah. But when you are at the purity of your connection with nature, you as nature, and therefore the purity of the magic that is available through the energetic systems, and you bring this into the flames, and you start to work with magic in a very pure way.
Yeah. So make that connection, to make that intention to reconnect with the flame within you, the flame within your heart, and to alchemize again, to become a great alchemist of your own life, and the translation of your knowledge into wisdom, to guide your own path, to become your own greatest leader through these incredible times of density that we have to navigate, holding your own light so that you may not only shine the light for your heart to crack open and find your own path, but you meet other lights along the way, and that way we get stronger and brighter together. Because, like we like to say, together we are better, or better we are together. So
together better are we.
Exactly. So should we move on?
Yeah. So I asked about 9/11. What in numerology is 911? What does it represent? And what is the importance of what happened in New York 22 years ago? Very sensitive topic. It's an energetic portal because we moved from the 9/9, the 9th of September, the 9/9 portal, which is the end, which marks a new beginning. The 10th yesterday was the 0 point, 10 is completion, and the 11 marks a new beginning, which is today, but also another beginning. On another level, therefore, it's a master number. So this is not only 9/11, it is a portal, and there is the lead up, the ending, the 0 point, and the new beginning. So this is marked with a new beginning. It shows us even through the destruction and the catastrophe, unity, greater unity within the people was created. And this is what the great reminder is today, to remember the loss. So the loss that can happen now, the loss and destruction that can happen now, the breaking down of old systems is again a call to greater unity within the people. Find that love within you that meets your neighbor. Open up your heart once again through the despair, find connection. And this is the great message now that will carry us forward. These are the great teachings of our time. Not only this, it is significant that it is the 22nd anniversary, which is a master builder number. It is the, what was the word you used? To reinvent, to resurrect. Resurrection, rebuild. The master builder number. So we have jumped this year as a quantum leap through this from the 11. We then go to the 22. So therein lies the quantum leap itself. And as you know, the 2 plus the 1 equals the 3. So it's a portal that is opening up for the trip for the 33. So that's huge energy, the 3-3. It's the, you've been talking about this, it's the collective consciousness, the third line of energy. So this combination of energies with this awareness, for those who can understand the 3 lines of consciousness, are able to spiral greater into this vortex of quantum leaping consciousness.
Yeah. Thank you. So if we're looking at the embodiment of 11, 22, and 33, and we're looking at it energetically as a spiral through time. So this 9, 10, 11 has opened up this portal, which then connects, because it is 11 immediately connects to the 22, because it's the 22 years. And we're bringing, it's like at the moment we've got this collapsing of timelines where we're becoming multidimensional. We're able to see how things happened in the past, which inform us now, which will then, because we're really correlating and merging these energies and these wisdoms, we're then able to step up to it takes us higher into the third realm, the third. So this is what we're carrying forward to, and perhaps this is 2033, that we're also leading forward from this energy right now into the 3 and the 33 master number. Now, what's really important about this is that this is why I talk so much about divine union, not only because of my own journey, because of that, and you can go back and watch one of my videos about that where you're interviewing me about this realization that through working together and this unity consciousness within ourselves, in the first line of consciousness, within another, and then within the collective consciousness, this is why the third line is so important right now, because it is, can we make it? Can we make it together? And this is why this working together in partnership, if you really knew the impact that it has to destroy your relationship with another, you would see it through.
Yeah.
Because that has a direct, you would see it through, and you would face, and you would go down there and do the work to get to the ignorance,
and
because
this,
you would realize the level of separation.
And this is why,
which prevents allowing the third line of consciousness to happen.
Yeah. But this is why it's important to start your own healing journey before you go into a relationship.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say if you're in a relationship you can't do it. But as we've seen, it is really challenging, because you believe you know each other, and so you've created an apparition of who you believe each other to be.
Yeah.
And that's why it can be challenging, because you have to leave the old you behind. And if somebody still holds that old opinion of you, if you don't grow together, then that can leave one of you stuck and the other one going ahead, and that creates separation.
Yeah. And I think that's another reason why we wanted to start sharing our story, because it's the integration. How do you integrate going to the therapist or couples therapy, or going plant medicine journeys, or whatever kind of modalities you're choosing? How do you really integrate that to fully be able to meet the other and come into creation? I don't see it a lot. And that's why we just want to frankly speak and share our journey, so that maybe just how we speak and what we talk about is inspiring you in how you can take this journey in your own way.
So I asked, why is this happening now, so 22 years later? Is to give hope. This is a message of hope. It's a message of hope, of love and unity through the destruction which has already started happening on a massive scale since 2020, but which will continue. So we need to look again and be reminded to light candles that lighten, to be minded about candles that light in the dark and stick together. So to be the candle. They illuminate thrice as much as one in the dark. So stick together and follow each other through the dark. Be not afraid. Be not afraid to uncover your shadows. Carry the light of the heart. So I was speaking to Hazel about this earlier. Many people think that the candle is in the hand, it's outside of you. You are the candle. So how can a flame be afraid of darkness if you are light? So let that give you courage. When you are going and excavating, doing the inner work to make yourself stronger, learn the ways of sacred compassion. Yeah, I've had to do this. It's about being gentle on yourself and self-talk. So when you make a mistake or you fall for something, you can be really hard on yourself. I was very hard on myself, and I didn't even know it. And it's these voices, the voice of the ego. If it's speaking down to you, then you're being hard on yourself because you are being your ego. And it's about turning that around and changing the coping mechanisms of being used to putting yourself down from what you've been taught to bigging yourself up. So if the voice in your head is saying, "Oh, you're so shit, you shouldn't have done that," you then say, "No, it's okay. I'm learning. I'm doing great. I'm doing great."
I had to do that today.
Yeah. It's a message of hope to come to love, compassion, unity on whatever level you are able to do right now. So don't be hard on yourself. Whatever you can do, you can do. Can you imagine 1,000 people walking through the darkest of nights, each carrying a candle? The light that comes from that is exquisite. So it's an invitation of hope that no matter what darkness we are moving through right now, whether it be more destruction of the old way, which yes, will continue, but also this is symbolic as we go into the darker seasons that carry that light. And if you have to do it alone, you do it alone. But if you do it together, you will create a brighter opportunity to expose that which needs to be seen in the dark, which is the pathway forward to the light. I wanted to touch on, she talks about destruction and that continuing of destruction. So we have embodied the new way. right? Now, what is the new way? The new way is something that you cannot comprehend until you feel it. The new way is truth. And we currently live in the old way, and the old way is dying, it's falling apart, it's crumbled, it's lost. The battle, the war is over, but there's some crumbling to happen. And it can look like there's still how do I say, like there's still, like it isn't already over. You know, like if you talk in the terms of the war of light and darkness, right, which isn't really accurate, because the purity of darkness is beauty personified. But if we talk about the distortion of darkness versus light, and there are distortions in light as well, yes, we know that. But to talk about that war, this invisible war that's going on behind closed scenes, it's already won. The light will win, and the light is winning, and the light has won, because time is not linear. But there is still delays due to the ignorance that people are holding, due to the fact that they don't wish to do the work. And this is what's causing so much pain and so much exposure, because the light, there is more light coming in. This is what creates the exposure. And Hazel's doing a course on that, the exposure of the ego, through the deciphering and pulling apart of narcissistic behavior in relationships. But we did a video on 5D consciousness, and it talks about destruction, a lot of destruction, and this is talking about unity through the destruction. And it's also called the Great Hello for a good reason. Through unity, nothing can stop us.
Exactly. I feel really touched by that. Thank you. Very powerful.
Well, when I can speak my truth, passion comes through.
Yeah, I love it.
So, and it is a message of resilience. To walk the path as you're doing takes courage, as you're experiencing, to keep stepping into the unknown. And when you meet truly in unity with another, you are experiencing, as you are experiencing, you step into the unknown, and you get each other through the love of your hearts.
Yeah, you understand each other, you receive each other, you are with each other through the love vibration of your own hearts, not through any of the desires or lust or anything that the ego wants connection to love, but you resonate in love together. And that power of creation is, oh my God, it's amazing. Seriously, something else.
I love when you talk about lust. I think of the 7 deadly sins. It's like one of my specialties. Like Hazel really specializes in love. I really specialize in darkness and demonic entities and stuff, because I love
combating them.
With love,
combating them with love.
Oh, you want to hurt me? I love you.
Oh, yeah. One of the things I wanted to say, what you were just talking about, is why the war is over, the conflict is over, but why it looks like it's continuing is because we did so much work on this, and particularly because you had a very high, distorted warrior energy within you, because you're healing from narcissism.
And magician.
Yeah. And these are the distorted archetypes which people have in them. Yes, they do. And it is this distorted warrior, which is like, it's led by all of the other toxic distortion behind. Too much information to go into right now, but the warrior, you know, has just kept fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, putting up walls and barriers and slashing it down and killing and destroying everything that is in so much in motion with that just doesn't know how to stop.
We have so much wisdom to share. Like, I could do a whole video about the sword.
Yeah.
The black sword, the dark sword, and the light sword. King Arthur.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's so much to talk about now.
So the point is now is like how to stop the battle within. So
so Zen Tarot says it's almost like we must destroy ourselves, our ego. Right on target.
Target.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we have been doing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You have to recreate yourself. That is the purpose of being here, to recreate yourself.
Yeah.
Like it, yeah.
And you have
destroy
to
yourself.
trust the light of your heart so profoundly.
Yeah, I always
that you're gonna keep carrying it no matter what. Oh my God.
I always say that when I met Hazel, it's like if someone asked me, what did Hazel do for you? Well, she destroyed my ego. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like she
baby.
came in with a sledgehammer. So that's what happens when you surrender to the feminine. So yeah, good luck.
And like I said in the last video, you know, somebody who embodies the essence of feminine, who knows how to hold that energy. And yeah,
don't surrender to just any feminine. Surrender to a shamanic one. Anyway, I asked, is there anything else to discuss? And we did a video on the blue moon, and what we forgot to put in that video is that the energy of the blue moons actually go all the way up to the autumn equinox, which is really, really important, and beyond, actually. I think it goes to the eclipse. The blue moon is so powerful because the color of blue is such a powerful color. Through our journey of going through the colors, we spent the most time in blue. It's the most difficult one because that is where the ego resides, believe it or not. It's called Adam's apple for a reason. The blue indeed is a very strong color that's coming through right now to remind us that it is the energy of the blue moon, which also carries us through the night. And it is this dark, deep blue you're experiencing the emergence of the voice of truth, which is the emerging. So through any emergency, let the truth emerge. Well, so I'm going to decode that and say that when she talks about emergency and the truth emerging, it's like, for example, 9/11, the truth emerged, even though people don't believe it. The truth emerges out of the emerging, the emerges out of the emergency. Now, this is so profound because the emergency number in America is 911, right? And it happened on 9/11. I mean, come on, how can you not like believe in whatever that is? How can you ignore that? How can you be ignorant to that? I mean, so I said, what does the original event show us? And we go on to the numerology of that.
And I just want to come back to the emergency and the emerging. So through the emergency of, oh my God, I'm breaking apart, my ego's breaking apart, this relationship's breaking apart, my job is breaking apart, my life is breaking apart. Through that breaking apart, this is where the emerging comes. And this resurrection of your true self, your soul. And I always like to think of it, it's like this, allow those lotus petals to open and fall. Allow the old way to fall, the old ways of being with yourself, with another, with what you present into the world. Allow them to fall, because through that emergency, which the ego is going, emergency, I'm going to die, don't let me die. It's like, no, we've got an emergency here. And yes, there is going to be that ego death as part of that process, because through that, there is the emerging of something new. There is the emerging of that soul union, that soul embodied consciousness within yourself. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. So should we move on to the last part now?
Yeah. So I asked, what did this original event show us? It showed us when we can come together through destruction, there was a loss. Yes, there was destruction. Yes, there was catastrophe. And through it all, we came together in greater unity. We as the people rose from the streets to unite and help each other through love and compassion. So it's about people demonstrating their true colors, because when you look at the disaster that happened in New York, it brought people together, and that showed people's true colors, and people's true colors are love and compassion. It's really profound when you look at it that way. Through this really impure act of devastation, of evil, it had the opposite effect. It brought people together, and that is profound on its own. But to understand that people's true colors come through darkness in September.
So this is something to watch out for as we are moving into September, and this energy that is in today and with the blue moon is like, it's not just one thing, it's multi-dimensional energy that carries us through. Is what are the true colors that are emerging? What are the decisions that people are making? Watch, get wise, start noticing, what are people's where is people, what are people choosing for? What are you choosing for as we're going into this dark season of the Northern Hemisphere? And remember to keep the light, which is not only the energy of your heart, but it's the consciousness. You're connecting your body with your heart and to ignite a greater level of consciousness. And this is where people's true colors will be seen. How do you deal with the dark? Do you project it onto others, or is it time now? Have you had enough now? Take your own journey, because that's what is needed. That is what is needed.
This exposure energy through light, which happens a lot in summer, I don't know if you noticed, but it definitely happens where we live, is that when the sun comes out, idiots come out. And this is the representation of light penetrating the skin and highlighting the darkness within. And so the darkness shows itself and people start acting like idiots, driving too fast or getting in fights and stuff like this, or being narcissistic or whatever. But the energy of exposure it can happen in the one, so you can be exposed to yourself, or you might notice exposure happening in your relationship, which may expose itself in the lighter months of summer because of that light energy that's coming in. And so you notice it in the collective. So in England, this huge exposure of this woman, a nurse at a hospital, had been killing newborn children, right? And then the exposure didn't stop there. It went up the chain and noticed that the whole of the company and the people she was working with, not all of them, were completely and utterly corrupt.
Yeah.
And this exposure goes out everywhere. We see it everywhere, and yet we've become so desensitized to it that we become ignorant to it.
Yeah.
And this is part of the problem. So this light coming in is doing us all a huge favor.
Yeah.
But it's also important to note that we are now heading into winter, as we've been discussing, heading into the darkness, into the void. And this can be a place of exposure or a place to hide.
I think we'll talk more about that, each time as we go, because we will be doing our podcast and guiding you into winter through those phases. And we'll talk about all of that because, we go through this as well. And, we're going to show up and bring what is real with us every week. Every time we deliver a podcast. So, Yeah, we
will. You're right. And I said winter solstice is one of my favorite portals for a reason. It's because it's the death process, and it's an honorable process of that takes you through an energy of rebirth. So it's about leaving behind the old. So it's a really an incredible time of reverence, personally, and especially Samhain as well. We call it Halloween. That's an incredibly reverent time for the ancestral energy of death.
And the pure energy of death, which is transformation. It's a transformational portal.
Exactly. So we'll just finish the channeling. She said, what are you going to do when it all crumbles down? When your life crumbles down, what are you going to do then? You have to find a way to rise like a phoenix from the ashes.
Beautiful, darling. Thank you.
Thank you. You channeled her.
So it's been a pleasure, and thank you to everybody who's contributed. And today it's been a pleasure to deliver our first ever podcast, Walk the Squawk, and we really hope you've enjoyed it. Join us again as we continue this journey, getting real and speaking the truth of love. And we will see you again very shortly. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you very much. We created an incredible outro, so it'd be great if you could stick around and watch it. And I'm going to add the 5D stuff we'll do a 5D podcast because you asked for updates, so it's better if we keep them all and then show the updates. Have a lovely rest of your Monday. Oh, come on, Hazel. You're supposed to have it ready.
Okay, let's go. Watch this and have a beautiful time. Signing out. Lots of love to you all.
It's not that. It's the outro.
Oh no.
So at the top, final outro.
Like, subscribe,
Like,
like, subscribe,
like.